Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of In the Eyes of Truth. Today with us back is Drago Bosnic. Um, for those who don't know, he is a political analyst, expert from Serbia. He's been on our program many a times, and we will today discuss the news that hit the airwaves here in Russia pretty fast and hard. That President of Serbia, Vucic, said our warehouses are overflowing with weapons. Come buy our weapons. And if they get to Ukraine, well, that's none of our business. And before that, there was also a report that Serbia was buying a lot of missile systems from Israel, uh, more than it needed. At least that's what it looked like. So are those then being resold?
Well, I'm not sure about that because we have Israeli these MLRSs or like
Mhm.
multiple launch rocket systems that we really need in the case that something goes down in Kosovo. However, I'm more concerned about these reports that our warehouses are full because first of all, we shouldn't be disseminating that sort of information at all, because a lot of enemies of Serbia would like to know that, and then send their agents to check out those warehouses and see what they can do about reducing them to rubble, pretty much. And not to mention, of course, I've covered this topic extensively. Like I've written several articles about this issue. I think the government is making a huge mistake just by saying this. Like, not even let's not even talk about sending the weapons to the Kiev regime, but like even saying this, it creates issues that shouldn't even be there. First of all, in the best case scenario, Serbia should be entirely neutral in terms of delivering weapons. The vast majority of Serbs obviously are rooting for Russia, but the thing is, like, just from a purely geopolitical standpoint, we shouldn't really be, contributing to the slaughter of anyone, especially not Russians. And I consider Ukrainians to be Russians. I feel sorry for everything that's going on. So in the best case scenario, Serbia should not be contributing to this slaughter because the only ones who have the interest of this slaughter, from moving forward and happening for years, probably even decades, are the British. I mean, they're the ones who are really, really happy about the body count. When they say hundreds of thousands or millions of Russians are dead, they don't mean the Russian soldiers. They mean Ukrainians who don't even realize that they are the Russians that the West is happy about being dead. In essence, Serbia should be contributing to this. I understand like the geopolitical usefulness of those statements, that the Serbian military industrial complex will send those. If that those were just statements, I wouldn't have nothing against it, Like those were just statements to make the West happy, but if nothing happens, in reality, that's great. However, if it really does happen, and if those weapons end up in Ukraine, then I mean, what's the point? These weapons are not going to, defeat the Russian army. Like they're pretty much just like a drop of water in the sea. The Russian military is destroying a bunch of far more capable Western weapon systems. So Serbian weapon systems are not going to, or munitions are not going to contribute to anything, especially not, give the Ukrainian army any chances of victory. So all of this is pointless, but what's not pointless, it would destroy our relationship with Russia. And this is something that, it has always gone very badly for Serbia in previous centuries. For instance, we had dynasties in the late 19th century who wanted to switch to Austria-Hungary. And then, of course, Russia just said, okay, no worries, And then we had a bunch of problems because of that. And like for decades, our full liberation from the Ottomans was pretty much delayed. And I just want to say the Russia could have freed the Balkans from the Ottomans like 300 or 400 years ago, but it couldn't do it because every time Russia would destroy the Turks, the British would create a European coalition that would attack Russia because they were terrified of Russia having access to the warm water ports. So they've pretty much delayed, the liberation of that area of our area from the Ottomans. And even when the Ottomans, left, they did everything in their power to make sure that the area is fragmented, that, Serbia is weakened and so on. And the only country in our history that ever had any interest to make Serbia strong was Russia. So like if we destroy this relationship, I mean, it's not about emotions. Serbs love Russia. That's like unquestionable. It's about like real geopolitical consequences for our country. Because losing an ally like Russia, I mean, who's going to be, who's going to have our back if it weren't for Russia? China is strong as well, but China doesn't have that many interests in the Balkans as Russia does. So, I think if this really goes forward, which I really hope it's not, I really, really hope it's not, it's going to create a lot of problems for Serbia. And the craziest part is the West is not going to like us more because of it. They're just going to laugh, and they're going to be happy about it because somebody's delivering weapons to the Kiev regime. I think the reason why there's so much pressure on Serbia is because Serbia produces these Soviet era or modernized Soviet era weapons or munitions. And these have been proven to be much, much better than any of these NATO weapons because the Soviet Union was building their weapons for war and building them to make them work, while Western weapons were made to make money. Like that's the main goal of these Western weapons, and that's why you can't have mass production of most Western weapon systems. This is why the West, for the last 3 years, 3.5 years, the West has been like going crazy around the world, buying all of the post-Soviet equipment they can find. And because Serbia produces a lot of this equipment, especially munitions, artillery munitions, they've been trying to, get Serbia to sell these, not directly, obviously, through various, proxies like Turkey or I don't know, Poland or and so on. And of course, this is problematic again because it's weakening Serbia, it's destroying our relationship with Russia, and on top of that, it's killing Russians. Like even if one Russian is killed by a Serbian grenade or a Serbian, shell or whatever, that's a disaster for the Serbian people.
It seems that Vucic is actually going against what the Slavic movements in the area have been. If we look at Poland, okay, Tusk is an animal of is a creature of Vander nut job, but Novoric, he's not exactly on good terms with the Banderites.
Yeah.
Then you have Bosic, who just got elected in Czech Republic, who said, "That's it. Not a penny of our money is going for to the Banderites, and we shouldn't be paying anything to them." Then you've got, of course, Slovakia. Um, well, Hungarians aren't Slavs, but they're in the same direction. And the Bulgarians are now screaming that their government's on the edge of being toppled by pro-Russian parties, that they're barely holding on to power. I don't know about the Croats at the moment, but most of the Slavs in the area have turned against Ukraine.
Well, the Croats are afraid that, what might happen when Russia wins this conflict, but they still sent, a bunch of tanks and armored vehicles and, much of their artillery munitions. I mean, this wouldn't be the first time the Croats are marching on Russia, you know, uh, as they
Not by themselves.
yeah, 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 of course, not by themselves. They would never dare to do that. I mean, they would never dare to go against Serbia by themselves unless they're backed by Germany or, Western nations. They will never try to go against any Slavic nations. But if they have the backing of the West, they're more than happy to go, kill some Orthodox Slavs. It's their favorite pastime. What I'm more worried about, is uh, if the government starts conducting these sorts of policies, it's not going to end well because, first of all, the protests in Serbia have been ongoing for well over a year. We know, I'm not saying that all protesters are Western agents. Like, I mean, that would be too much. A lot of people are very unhappy with the situation because the West has been, pushing a lot of pressure on Serbia, financial, economic, and others. Just because Serbia still maintains a working relationship with Russia, not an allied relationship, but a working relationship with Russia. They want the entire continent to be, like united in Russophobia, and of course, this is almost impossible to do in Serbia. So I guess they're just trying to push Vucic to like jumpstart Russophobia in Serbia, and the thing is, like, it's not working. It's only going to exacerbate the situation with the protests. Because the protests are not really homogenous. Like there's a bunch of patriotic organizations which are part of the protests, and they're not pro-Western. I mean, they're anything but pro-Western. But the thing is, the West has always been trying to control the way the protests in Serbia work. Like they use these NGOs to, they don't have to control the protests directly. They just have to nudge the protesters in a certain direction. And, the Croats and several other, countries in the region are sending their agents to ensure that there's as much hostility in Serbia as possible. For them, it would be ideal if there was a civil war. I mean, they would really love that. So, like, it's really problematic. We have like multi-spectrum pressures on the country from like all sides. And the only ones who are like not putting the pressure on Serbia are the BRICS countries, especially Russia. So all we hear from BRICS countries is, we can work together if you want it. That's it. And all we get from Western nations is, we don't really care about your economic livelihood. We only care about, you doing what you're told. And like if Serbia does 95% of what the West wants, they're still not happy. They want the rest of the 5% because they don't want someone that they could negotiate with. They want blind servants, people who are going to be ready to do whatever the hell they're told to do. And Serbs are not like that. I mean, as we all know, like Serbs have always been pushing against any sort of invader that came from any side, especially from the West. So we have no idea what's going to happen, but the situation doesn't look very good. I really hope there's not going to be like a civil war or anything. That's the last thing I want. But I think the government should be extremely careful about what they do because, the West will use this against the government as well because they will just say, okay, great. Now Vucic did something anti-Russian. We can use that, to push more protests. And then when we topple Vucic or whatever, we can put in an entirely 100% like pro-Western government. Because there's no way in hell the West will allow any pro-Russian government to come to power in Serbia.
Well, you've got the Visegrad grouping, which again is the nations that Brussels has now uh, announced they will be suing for billions of euros of, well, their money,
Yeah.
obviously, because Brussels doesn't have any money of its own. So there's already a bloc that could easily one day separate from Brussels, particularly if you look at the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, the countries that make up the Austro-Hungarian Empire, minus the Croats. Well, the Austrians, they have liberals in power, but they are a coalition government because the conservatives won, the anti-Brussels conservatives. You're looking at a reforming, even if like a loose confederation of sorts of the old Austro-Hungarians, their holdings, obviously that they're against Brussels. So there are other nations in the area that are standing up to Brussels.
Yeah,
Does
there are.
Vucic not
The thing
notice
is,
that?
well, the thing is, like, I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but the difference is those countries are in NATO and the EU. So NATO is not going to attack those countries because they already, are members. However,
Oh,
Serbia is
Austria
not.
isn't.
And because Serbia is not, Serbia would be a perfect target for, to be crushed because the West knows it's losing everywhere. Like they know that the multipolar world is strengthening. They know they can't defeat Russia and Ukraine. They can't even defeat Russia, if they decided to invade the country, they wouldn't be able to do it. And I'm not even talking about 6,000 nukes. I'm talking about conventional weapons because Russia now has 3 to 5 million people who have battlefield experience who could be mobilized in a matter of several days, who could be armed. Russia also has the production, a multi-fold increase in production of various weapon systems, specifically hypersonic missiles and drones. So the West, like even if the entire NATO decided to go against Russia, they would lose a conventional war. We know that. It's not difficult to make that, prediction. So they need some kind of a win, and Serbia would be a perfect win for that for them. Like Serbia would be a perfect country to be crushed because we're small, we're weak. We're not really like the remnants of Yugoslavia that was able to withstand like 10 years of Western siege. Now we're the shadow of our former selves, and we would not be able like we there could be guerrilla fighting, but like it's not going to do much damage to the West because nowadays the way the wars are waged, it's very difficult to wage a guerrilla war because everything is under surveillance. And you could easily, just with drones and stuff, you could easily destroy any guerrilla force, especially in Europe, but in a modern war in Europe. And this is why I think, it would be best for Serbia to maintain neutrality until Russia finishes the job in Ukraine. And then we can see like how the European continent can be well, let's say recomposed in terms of security guarantees and stuff like that. Because Europe will have to take into account Russian security interests. Because when Russia finishes all this, it's going to have, I mean, it already has by far the most capable, the most battle-hardened army on the planet. So, I mean, if you're ready to fight that kind of force, good luck with that. You're going to need it.
Well, what about Greater Serbia? We have, as far as I've been reading, I haven't been reading that much, but I used to serve there, so I know a little about Bosnia. Bosnia seems to be splintering again. Not that it was ever really a natural nation state, as
Yeah,
a conglomerate made up by NATO and the EU and the
yeah,
UN. And then what's going on right now well, let's start with that. Srpska Republic. What's going on with
yeah.
the Srpska Republic right now?
Well, the Republika Srpska was actually under a lot of pressure for years. However, it seems now, at least for the time being, Trump realizes he has bigger issues. And also Dodik, the president of Republika Srpska, he made what turned out to be a smart move. He has good relations with Israel. He has good relations with the Trump administration. I mean, he was seen, wearing MAGA hats before Trump became president. So that has to count for something. And also, the Israelis are supporting him because it's like an anti-Muslim thing. You have the let's say the confrontation between Muslims and Serbs in Bosnia, and then you also have the confrontation between Palestinians and Israelis. And of course, I'm not saying it's a question of morality. It's just a question of strategic interests. Because a lot of Muslim countries are still supporting the instability of Bosnia by sending mujahideens and God knows what else to Bosnia, and like there are training camps with Islamic terrorists in Bosnia. So this could explode at any moment, and Republika Srpska is looking for allies anywhere, and those allies, I mean, it sounds strange, but those allies actually turn out to be America, Russia, and Israel. So it is really, really it's a very complex situation. You can't really look at it black and white because as you can imagine, Russia, Israel, and the United States don't really have much in common in terms of interest. Of course, the U.S. and Israel do, but the thing is,
Well,
like,
that's questionable.
yeah, yeah, it's
U.S.
questionable because,
politicians
of
in
course,
Israel do. Whether the
yeah,
U.S. and Israel does, that's
yeah,
a
yeah.
very
The,
big
the American
question.
people and Israel have a different opinion on that, of course, but the American government is, of course, the Mossad's bitch, as one of them colorfully said. In essence, like, it's at this point, the United States is reducing its pressure, sanctions pressure specifically on Republika Srpska, which is good. And the interesting thing is, there's the Hungarian military in Republika Srpska, and they've actually, promised to protect Dodik from, NATO forces that were trying to or threatening to arrest him last year. So, it's a very complex situation. But Republika Srpska is actually doing very, very well. I mean, their diplomacy is now better than Serbia's. Considering the fact that it's not actually an independent country and it doesn't really have its own Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they're doing much better than Serbia. I mean, I wish Serbia had the diplomatic, skill of Republika Srpska. It would be far easier. But also, Serbia has different forms of pressure. And of course, like as I said, I understand why the government is making pro-Western statements, but statements are one thing. Actual actions where you do certain things is another. And again, I mean, Russia is going to remember this. Like Russia will know in the future that we've. Well, I mean, it's going to be an internal shame for the Serbian people to have any sort of Serbian weapons sent to fight Russia. And because of that, I really, really hope that the government will, tread carefully because this is going to be used against Serbia in multiple ways. And the West is going to be perfectly happy to see Serbia and Russia fighting, about anything. And for them, this is great. But as I said, the West is not going to love us any more than they do already. I mean, love us or actually dislike us any less because we go against Russia at any in any way. They're just going to, they're going to be happy because it's going to be easier to crush Serbia without Russian support.
Well, is there a chance that Vucic might actually become more radical because he's gone down this little path and he seems to be heading toward it. When Russia is winning, that would probably mean the end of his political career in the end once this conflict's over. Or even if the conflict grows to encompass half of Europe, it'd still be the end of his political career with Russian tanks moving forward. Would he become then even more radicalized?
No, 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 he wouldn't. You see, Vucic, when he was like, for people who don't know, he was always pro-Russian. Like, the thing about Vucic, he came to power on his pro-Russianness. Like he was a Russophile like his entire career. Like for as long as I can remember, he was always praising Russia and calling the EU and NATO as satanic organizations. I mean, this was like Vucic from like just 10 years ago or 12 years ago. Now he has modified his rhetoric, but not because he's changed his opinion. He does that for the most part because he believes that the West, if we appease the West will, leave us alone just a little bit. Now, if is that working? Maybe, maybe not. To me, it seems that the pressure is not really subsiding that much because, I mean, what the West does is like they want to force us to wean off from the Russian gas and oil. And, this is not the question of whether we're pro-Russian or anti-Russian. This is like the question of physics, as the Foreign Minister Szijjártó of Hungary said. Like, Hungary doesn't like Russia. It's about the fact that if we don't get the gas from Russia, we have to buy the LNG from America, which is like 5 to 10 times more expensive. Plus, like neither Russia nor Serbia have, sea terminals because we're landlocked countries. So that means we would be dependent on who? Well, fucking Croatia to, give us gas and oil. And we know how that works already because, we're paying exorbitant import tax, whatever you want to call it, to the Croatians just to get oil. So now, when they threaten to sanction the Serbian oil industry, now we try to go with the Hungarians and their mall. And what happened? Suddenly, the refineries blow up in Hungary. I guess it's a coincidence, right? If I were a conspiracy
Oh,
theorist, I would say the
Hungary,
Ukrainians had something
Romania,
to do with that.
yeah.
So there you go. I mean, the Ukrainians are like playing the role of the proxy for the West in every category, whether it's against Serbia, against Russia, against Hungary, against any country.
Oh, I don't know about how much Hungary doesn't like us. Actually, I think the relations have gotten a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I meant like historically,
yeah.
Russians and Hungarians don't have the reason to be friends. I mean, in 1948, Russia intervened against the Hungarian Revolution. In both world wars, Hungary was against Russia. So, like, it's not the thing about Russians and Hungarians being historical friends. Obviously, they're not. But it's just a question of real politics because Orban understands that Russia is not a threat to Hungary. The real threat comes from the fucking Brussels, which wants to, import millions of refugees and asylum seekers from the Middle East and Africa, and pretty much like deconstruct their Hungarian society. And given the Hungarian, demographics, given their birth rates, which are catastrophic, they know that they would be, outbred out of existence like by the end of the century. And this is what they don't want. And this is what a lot of countries in Eastern
All of
Europe don't
Europe
want.
faces that.
Yeah, Europe is facing that 100%. Like Western countries, they keep, bragging about having a growing population. But if you break down the growth of the population, you see the majority of that is coming from the immigration and from the birth rates of the immigrants, not the
Yep.
locals. The locals
Yep.
are disappearing pretty much. So Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, they all see that, and they don't want that to happen to them. They're pushing back. The problem is Poland is blinded by its endemic Russophobia, so they don't realize that they could make a very good deal with Russia, in the future. They're pushing themselves to become the next Ukraine, and this is the biggest issue I think in Eastern Europe. Otherwise, Eastern Europe could make a deal with Russia, and like even as a neutral territory, it would be good for Russia because Russia just doesn't want NATO on its borders.
Actually, I think in Poland, it's a little more nuanced because Novorich seems to be. I mean, I'm not saying he's some kind of Russophile. He's not, but he's definitely anti-Brussels, and he's not exactly friends with Zelensky. So
Yeah.
he's taking a slightly different position, but he still has parliament until the next elections, anyways, and Tusk and Sarkozy, not Sarkozy. What's his name? The foreign minister,
Oh, Sikorsky.
Sikorsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from the name of the Russian engineer, aviation
Yeah, yeah,
engineer.
yeah. The
Hopefully
one
they're
who.
not related.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sikorsky is well. Sikorsky's an idiot. I mean, he's Mr. Applebaum, and his kid serves in the U.S. Army, so he doesn't have to
Yeah.
worry about that. Well, I guess he's got to worry about whether his kid gets whacked in Venezuela, Cuba, Nigeria, uh, Colombia, Panama,
Or
Greenland.
Afghanistan again. They've been
Yeah.
threatening Afghanistan again. So
Well, that seems to have gone away. I think
yeah.
somebody explained to
You
Mr.
know,
Trump that getting there is going to be a lot harder than last time.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking, I don't think America is really, except possibly Venezuela, I don't think America is going to attack any of these countries, not because, America is pacifist, it's because America no longer has the military capacity to launch invasions of the style of Iraq or Afghanistan in the early 2000s. Like a lot of people are not really interested, to go to the military as they were in those in that era. I think this is more like speculative. Like Trump is a speculator. Like he was a speculator before he became president. So now he's in a position of not just speculating, but actually creating decisions that are going to, cause the market to crash or to cause the market to go
oh, he
up.
does that
And
absolutely, and the people
yeah,
around him.
and he knows like he can make a bunch of money by making these, bombastic
Okay.
statements. Oh, the war is starting tomorrow. Then the price of oil collapses. He buys stocks. Then he says, okay, we're not going to go to war. The stocks go into the orbit, and then he makes money. And I think this is the reason why he makes all these crazy statements. I mean, we don't know if he's going to act on that because he's very unpredictable. Plus, it's not just Trump. Like people keep forgetting that the deep state is still there. The deep state has either made a deal with Trump or is blackmailing Trump,
Or
whichever
Trump's
is the
just part of
case.
the deep state.
Yeah, or he's just a part of the deep state because I mean it's a multi layered organization, and then he could just go to war. I mean, Venezuela would be like easy pickings. I mean,
Well,
officially, strategically, because it's close to America. Although in terms of
2,000
military,
kilometers.
yeah, but in terms of like tactical and operational military like fighting, I think Venezuela could be a disaster because it's like a combination of Afghanistan and Vietnam because it's a mountainous jungle, and fighting in that kind of environment is a nightmare for anyone.
Well, they're not going to invade Venezuela per se. The forces that are there are for decapitation and to
Yeah,
support whatever internal elements like Machada and whatever generals that have made a deal with the devil are going to grab power. Now,
yeah,
of course, that's going to be a civil war, and whether or not they're going to be able to hold it. I mean, most of except for the coastal oil facilities, everything else is inland, and you got to hold that one way or the other. And if there's a civil war going on, yeah, that's how they got sucked into Vietnam. I mean, they didn't just go into Vietnam; they got literally sucked in advisors, then one battalion, then one brigade, and one division, and then all hell breaks loose by that point.
yeah,
Um, Nigeria, by the way, if you look at Nigeria, I wrote a Russian article on that. Why Nigerian Christians? Because Trump has no hard on for Christians. He's not a Christian himself.
yeah,
Not really. Um, why Christians in Nigeria? Because if you look at it, southern half is 47% Christian, 47% Muslim. The majority of victims are actually Muslims, not Christians, because the American-backed IGIL and all these other Al Qaeda are fomenting rebellion up north, trying to take power. But it's the resources, it's the oil,
yeah,
it's the rare earth minerals. They're all around the coast, and those are Christians. So if they protect the Christians,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is what people never understand. It's never about, whatever the reason is, like the official reason, the ideology, religion, whatever. It's always the excuse. And of course, it's the perfect excuse if you're going to get all these things that you don't have because, the evil Chinese don't want to sell it to you because you're sanctioning them, into oblivion.
Yeah.
So I
We
think
forget
this
the
is
second part, the sanction to oblivion.
yeah, yeah. Well, of course. I mean, they're trying to sanction China. Otherwise, but in reality, like it's not going to work. I was in China like a month ago,
Oh,
and
cool.
I mean, it's an incredible country. First of all, the one of the first things you see is that they're not arrogant, they're not aggressive, and with their production capacity, if they were to become as just like 10% of the American aggressiveness. I mean, who would be able to stop them except like nukes? And another thing is like I was amazed by the relationship that the Chinese have towards Serbs and the Russians, and all this like stories about China wanting to take Siberia and the Russian Far East and so on. Like we know that this is nonsense because when the Russians came in, I actually met Baburin, who was like the deputy leader of the Duma. Like I mean, the Russians and the Chinese have such a great relationship. And actually, the Chinese said, like, I actually met their foreign minister. He said, they said, like, the Chinese said, we look at Russia as a big brother. And I was like really, amazed by this. And a bunch of this is something I didn't expect. A bunch of like higher echelon Chinese people speak Russian.
Okay.
Like, the party people they speak, like you're more likely to find a high-ranking party member speaking Russian and English, which really is, it really you have to go and see that like for yourself to believe that. And the Russians had the limos, like the rest of us, like we were all treated like very good, but like the Russians had the limos and the helicopters. We had like buses and stuff like that. But like one thing I will never forget. I was the only guy from Serbia, like I was the only Serbian member of our delegation who was there. And Baburin started singing Tamo Daleko, which is like a very, very popular Serbian song from World War One. At one point, because like we had this dinner and like everybody was singing, their national songs or songs that are prominent in their culture, and they didn't even get the chance because like the evening was like already done, like the dinner was already done, and they didn't get to me to sing it. So Baburin saw that and he raised his glass towards me and like sang that, and I'm thinking like there it is, this is the thing about Russia and Serbia, like. I'm not really like a Serbian diplomat or something. I'm a nobody, in that like geopolitical or like state or government sense. Like just a journalist. He doesn't have to do that, but he still did that because I'm a Serb. And this is the thing about Russians and Serbs. Like we love each other, like as peoples. And this is why, like, I keep saying we don't have to like support Russia. Russia will survive without Serbia. We don't have to say, oh, we support Russia like in terms of government, but we don't have to be like, I mean, we should never be against Russia because that has never happened in the Serbian history. Like Serbia and Greece were the only countries in World War II that didn't send any troops to the Eastern Front because like even with the
Well,
most
Bulgaria didn't send. I think they sent some police units, but they didn't send any troops.
yeah, but like they
They
were
sent a
part of
lot of
the
equipment.
Axis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were part of the Axis, that's the
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And even the staunchest like pro-Nazis in Serbia, they said to the Germans like there's no way that any Serb that no matter how Nazi the Serbs are, like those who were like the collaborators, there weren't many of them, like several thousand maybe. But the thing is, like, even among them, you can't find people who are going to go to Russia, like, to fight against Russia. And they tried, and they couldn't like find, I don't know, two guys or something. And this is the thing about Serbia. Like, we have to be very careful what we do towards Russia because it could ruin the relationship. Not because it's not just in our interest, but also because like why would you want to lose such a powerful, such a like long-term ally? Because for us, Russia is going to be an ally no matter how powerful it is, and it's going to be like that for centuries to come because it was like that, centuries ago.
Well, we've got about 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What's going on in Chernogorия, Montenegro for the English speakers?
Yeah, well, the situation in Montenegro is like it's peaceful, but the thing is like when it comes to like the relationship between the Serbs and the Montenegrins, What
The
really
Serbs and
happened.
the Montenegrin Serbs, because you're all
Yeah,
still
yeah, and the
Serbs.
Montenegrine Serbs. When I say Montenegrines and Serbs, I mean it's the same people, but because of the NATO's nation building project, now like 45% of the population says, "Oh, we're not Serbs, we're Montenegrins," which is like saying, well, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as
It's
like
the Russians and
Ukrainians.
Ukrainians.
Yeah, yeah, it's the exact same thing. Like Ukrainians are Russians, we know that. Like even they said, like there was this one battle where the Ukrainians said, "Mi ruski также," right? And which means like we're also Russians. And like this is what's happening in Montenegro. Now, the real problem in Montenegro came with the Turks. And once again, like after 150 years since the Turks were, driven out, now 100,000 Turkish citizens moved into Montenegro, to work and so on, which
Oh,
is a
wow.
considerable amount because it's a country with 600,000 people. So like, I don't know, over 10%, like 15% of the population were now Turks. And of course, they started, doing
Well,
certain things to,
they don't
uh,
learn. I mean, after so many hundreds of years under the Ottomans, they don't learn.
yeah, yeah. Like they moved in because the Brussels said, okay, great, you're going to have cheap labor and so on. And these Turkish construction companies. So what really happened is they started, molesting girls. And the thing is, the Montenegrins are not people you want to fuck with. Like the Montenegrins are still like masculine. They're not like, I mean, they're Serbs. Like they're not really people that whose, women's you want to mess with. So they like the moment they touched one girl, a bunch of Montenegrins came in and beat the shit out of them. And then a bunch of Turks started fleeing back to Turkey because they realized, okay, this is a bad idea. We shouldn't be doing this. It's the same thing in
They did
Serbia.
the same thing in Kazakhstan, by the way, and the Kazakhs
Yeah,
started literally slaughtering. They had several dozens that were killed
yeah.
about
Well, I mean, the
15
thing
years
is,
ago.
like, in Eastern Europe, in these post-Soviet countries, post-communist countries, men are not Western men. Men are men. So if you touch our women, you're going to have a
Yeah,
very, very ugly surprise coming your way. And this is why I'm saying the things that, I've been saying this for years. The things that are happening in Western Europe with, mass rapes of women, that cannot happen in our country because whoever is responsible, we're going to find them. We're going to fucking kill them. Like there's not going to be any like, oh, let's do this thing, legally, there's going to be a trial and so on. No trial. We're going to get you, if you try to touch our people, like our women, our children and so on. And
yeah.
this is a good thing because the crazy thing about it is actually it united Serbs and Montenegrins finally in Montenegro because I mean Serbs, Montenegrin Serbs, and those who are still consider themselves Serbs. So it's a crazy thing. We needed Turks to come in and for a bunch of people to realize, oh, we're actually Serbs. We're one people. We shouldn't be fighting each other. So that's one of the good things that came from all of that. But we'll see. The situation is really complex, really crazy. But as I said, I really, really hope that the government is not going to do something stupid because it's going to cost us, all of us. I mean, even the protesters, the government, the entire country.
Yeah. As the church says, God often sends you enemies to get you to do the things you should have been doing to begin with.
Yep, yep,
So,
pretty
and
much.
enemies, difficulties, things of that. So, that's good to hear. That's very good to hear. And I'm hoping for the greater Serbia in the end of all this. Montenegro, Srpska Republic, Northern Macedonia. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
No, yeah,
there's also the Krajina
Northern
part.
Macedonia.
There's also the Serbian parts that were taken by Croatia and so on. But none of that
But
can be done
yeah.
without Russia. Like we need a stronger Russia in Europe to do that. And if something happens between Serbia and Russia, like in terms of destroying the relationship, that's not going to happen. And also,
Drago,
Serbia is going to
I'm
be.
sorry I gotta interrupt. We are out of time. I didn't even
Oh yeah,
notice.
yeah, yeah.
We've got maybe about 20 seconds left. Everybody, thank you for joining. Drago, thank you. We'll keep the
My pleasure.
conversation going. Any comments, questions, leave in the comments section. Drago, thank you. That's a few seconds left. That's